Welcome to the Logic in Life Coaching Podcast, episode 28.
Everyone wants happiness and success, and we know how to get you there. Come listen to the Leadership Society of Arizona as we teach a proven logic to help you simplify life, overcome challenges, and predict the future. You're listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. My name is Chuck Zalanis, and I'm joined by Dr. Alfredo Rivera, as well as our trusty weekly guest, Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi. I'll give a brief introduction of who Alfredo Rivera is, and then we'll let him ask the question of the week. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, wonderful. So Dr. Alfredo Rivera got his PhD in construction management. He worked with Best Value Approach for the Performance-Based Studies Research Group. He's also a director of the Leadership Society of Arizona and one of the co-founders. So thank you so much for coming on to the podcast this week, Alfredo.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chuck. I really appreciate it.
Great. So fire away. What's your question?
So I thought a lot about this, and as you all probably know, Dr. Jacob is my mentor. And when I first met him, I wouldn't say that I was the most logical person, or even that I knew that logic was critical for a person to be happy and successful. And so my question this week for you, Dr. Jacob, is, for our viewers, is it important to be a logical person? And how do you know if you are logical?
Now this is an interesting question. Okay, so let's first define, and to make sure we're on the same page, of what is being logical. When someone is logical, to me, it's like taking that they can see information that the majority of people would understand and see. It's like common sense, in other words. It's like you see a fire, it's common sense that you're not going to touch the fire because it's hot. And you've seen it before, so someone who has logic says, yes, fire is hot, so I shouldn't touch it. Does that make sense? Like, when I run really fast, if I hit anything when I'm running really fast, I could hurt myself. That's like logic to me, right? Is that what you define as logic, being logical, Alfredo, or is it something else?
I would agree with that.
Okay, now, the ability to tell the difference, that's also another aspect of being logical. It's like when a child's going through life and there's different situations they can come in. One is like maybe on the playground. One is like maybe like in a classroom. When you're logical, you can tell playground is for playing, you can be loud. Outside, everyone else is being loud. You're taking in the information, you understand what's going on, I can scream on the playground. But when a child is logical, they also can go into the classroom and they can tell the difference between the playground and the classroom. Say, classroom, everyone else is quiet, everyone else is sitting down. I probably can't like scream and get up and do whatever I want in the classroom. That's someone who has logic or is being logical. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so one is being able to understand, what's going on. The other is also being able to tell the difference to know, how you should act, what you should do. So all of that is being logical. And so if logic is really being able to understand what's going on and do the right things to get the best result, like if you can't tell the difference, then you might yell in a classroom and you might go through more pain. People might not like you as much. You might not get as good grades because the teacher hates you. Hopefully that never happens, but it could. So when you're logical, then it means that you get better results in things. You can perform at a higher level. More people will agree with you or will want to, work with you. Okay, Chuck, do you have any questions here?
It seems like you're applying this to elementary school type examples. And Alfredo's really asking the question about high school. So someone probably who's thinking about college, someone who's thinking about their future, they're not going to be thinking back on elementary school, well, should I yell at the playground? So can you get like a little more specific of an example?
Yes. Now, I use the elementary examples because that's easy, common sense logic for most people. So people can see the logic in it. Now, logic has all different levels, which means the more you understand, the more you see, the more you can tell the difference, then the more logical you are. But it means that if you got all of society, most of society could be maybe this logical. But then as you increase in your ability to understand and to be logical and to have logic in your life, then there's going to be less people in society with that amount of logic, right? So take a high school or college example. Take like two different teachers. The high school student who has a little bit more logic and understanding will realize that teachers are different, that they can't act the same for each teacher. One teacher might be really strict, they got to turn everything on time, they got to raise their hand in class. The other might be really laxed and say, hey, turn in, as long as it's around the right time, you can turn it in, I'll count the points, and as long as you're being creative and learning and interactive, then I'm good. So the logical person will say, hey, in this class, I want to be participative. In this class, I want to make sure that I'm creative. And in this class, I better turn every assignment in on time. I better raise my hand to speak, right? And so, that maybe is an example for you. It takes more understanding. You got to be able to tell the difference between two people more. But that's stuff that maybe a high school student would go through. So if you're being logical by if you're getting better results, if you're happier in life. If you're doing well and you're succeeding and you're achieving what you want to, and you're able to work with other people, that you're being more logical.
I have an example of this. When I was in high school AP history, and I was in this class, and every day we had to read a whole chapter in this thick history book, and we'd have a test every week, and it would be very, very detailed. And so what the teacher's yeah, don't work together. This is something that you have to work on yourself. But I found that the people that scored the highest were always people who had study groups. And what they did is they just divided the work and they highlighted the most important parts. So that way, the people that were trying to go through everything, memorize all the details, were the people that were getting so bogged down on the exam you had to spend so much time. But if you were actually working in these study groups where they all got 5s on their AP history exams, they got all perfect scores on all their tests, and they had less effort. So it makes a lot more sense if you're working in that way versus taking the harder route, taking the more detailed route, not asking for help, that sort of thing.
Definitely. So being logical is just knowing and understanding what's going on and being able to do things the best way according to that. And so if you're doing well, by a couple of things. Do things take you a long time to do? The longer it takes you to do, the less logical you're probably being. 2, are you getting good results? Are you getting good test grades? Are you able to pass your classes with really good grades? Are you able to get into the positions you want to in your groups? Are you able to, be able to earn a lot of money? Whatever it is that you're doing, if you're doing it logical by if you're able to, 1, not spend a lot of time on it, and 2, get good results on it. And three, you know you're doing it very logically if everybody around you is saying, wow, you're really good at something, or you're doing that really well, or wow, you're really efficient, right? These are all signs that you're being very logical.
Now, I had another thought, and that is, especially, well, it's always been going on in every age, but when you're in high school, you're coming and you're interfacing with all kind of concepts, ideologies, things like, also other non, I guess, philosophical things like which school I should go to, etc. But if you're a young person, does being logical help a young person, know what the right thing is to do, and how can they quickly tell the difference?
Okay, now here's the thing you got to realize. When you're logical, you can tell the difference. You know what's right. You don't have to have anyone telling you that. You don't have to do any research on it, because when you already know it, you have to already know it to be logical, right? In order to be logical in studying, you have to already know the best ways to study. No one has to tell you that. You don't have to research the best ways to study, right? You already know it. That's why you can be logical in it. That's why when you sit down to study, the logical person is going to realize, if I didn't study the entire semester and it's only 2 days before the exam, the logical thing to do is get help. The logical thing to do is get other people who already know the things, to get someone to support you, help you, divide up the work so that you can actually get prepared in time, right? But to be logical, you already have to know those things and what's right. You already have to know the best way to do it. So in reality, what you're really asking me, Alfredo, is if I'm a young student and I don't have logic, I don't have this understanding on the best ways to do things, I don't have an understanding of how life works yet, which is for most students, what do I do? How can I get this logic even though I haven't been through a lot in life? I don't have a lot of experience. I don't really know and have, the information that an adult that is maybe like, 60 years old has, and the logic that someone who's very experienced in life might have. And that is a very simple thing. If you don't know the best way to do something, but you want to act in the most logical way possible, there's only one thing to do. Find a mentor. Find someone who already knows. Now, this can go in many different ways. One, it can be a person, which I always advise most. Because even if that your one person doesn't know how to do what you want to do the best way, they can point you in the right direction to finding that. Two, it could be through the internet. Nowadays, if you search anything on the internet, you can find really good stuff. Great ways to do things, great solutions for things that you wouldn't even think that anybody had the same issue as you, but on the internet, everybody has had the same issue as you. And the third is always, if you know someone who's really good at that specific thing that you want, then they don't necessarily have to be your mentor, but I definitely would get their advice for that one case. Right? So that is the only way truly to get the logic when you don't have it already. When you're not inherently smart or understand life and understand what's going on or understand how to approach something, the only way is to get help. And this is probably the toughest thing for high school students to do, is to ask for help. The second toughest is to know that they need help in the first place. This is really the toughest thing for anyone, is to recognize that they need help. And you need help when you're not doing well. I can elaborate on that all day long, but if you're not getting the good grades, if you're not being able to make the money you want, if you're not able to improve at the game that you want to improve on, if you're not able to do the things that you're wanting to in a quick enough time for you, then you know you need help. You know you could use a little bit more of logic in your life.
Or for me, people not being able to answer the questions that I had in my mind. I had to go seek for help, which is actually what led me here.
That could be. Now, if everyone, I always tell people get a mentor, that's the easiest way to go. There are other things you can do here to improve your logic. And so I'll give you some advice, some things that anybody could do, whether they know someone who's smart or they don't. Okay, first, looking for patterns in life. Looking at things from a very high level. A lot of people don't realize this, but normally when people try to understand something, they try to break it apart and then study each individual part. That's not the best way to do things. The best way to do it is look at your overall goal, where you want to get to, and then take a very high level and look at the entire system, entire thing that's going on, and try to figure out from there the best way to move forward. Exactly see the patterns going on with the entire system, entire process that you're going through. Looking too much at one thing. For example, say you want to make more money in life. So you might say, okay, well, I need to look at just in my life, I'm going to just look at now, my work and things like that. Well, that might kind of help you a little bit, looking at what job you want to get, what not. But what's going to help you even more to develop the logic and the understanding is not looking at that. It's looking at everything in your life and saying, okay, if I'm trying to make more money and this is what I'm currently doing, then to look at patterns, right? And say, hey, look, okay, what's the pattern? Well, successful people who make a lot of money, a lot of times a pattern that they have is what? They have a structured going to bed, waking up. Usually they go to bed early, wake up early, right? And so when you're looking at your life, if you're only looking at your work and what job you're going to get, then you're limiting exactly what you can do to actually be earning more money, right? Because really what you need to look at is everything you're doing in your life that's going to help you reach this goal. And so you can see patterns better instead of just looking at one little thing, looking at the whole, right? And so look for patterns and look at everything you're doing and look at patterns of successful people and what you're doing, right? So the next thing is comparing. Comparing in terms of how much you're worth is not a good thing. Everyone's valuable, regardless if you make a lot of money, don't, if you're like achieving a lot of things or you're not, whatever it might be. But if you want to know the difference between, hey, successful people and yourself, and you want to be successful, then you got to compare. You got to see what you're doing in your life compared to what they're doing in their life. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. And so one is look for patterns and look at what they're doing, look at what you're doing. Next is you got to be able to tell the difference between them and you. Differentiate between what you're doing and what they're doing. The third is do something. I give this advice a lot, but it works for everything. You got to be more logical. You got to go out and actually try to do something at first. You can't develop logic, understanding. You can't develop your intelligence, right, if you're not doing anything. Even if you're doing the wrong thing, even if you're doing things inefficiently or bad, as long as you go out and do it, you got a shot, at least. So do something. The fourth, document and track. So if you're trying to do something better, more logical, we'll track it, document it, right? So you go for a month, say, this month, I want to be more logical in studying my homework or, in studying for school. So you got to document how much time are you studying? What were your grades like in the homework assignments you did and the tests you did during that period? And then once you're done with it, then look, Did you improve your grades? Did you shorten the amount of time you had to study for, right? If you document it, then you can tell, oh yeah, studying with other people, it was more logical because my grades improved and I didn't have to study as long, right? But if you don't document, you might never know if it improved or if it helped you. And so those are the 4 things that I always tell people they can do if you don't have a really good mentor to help improve your logic and understanding.
Very
Awesome.
good. Appreciate that. Hopefully, some of the high school students out there can glean from this information. I know it's helped me in my life.
Excellent. So thank you so much, Alfredo, for coming on. Thank you, Dr. Jacob, for answering his questions. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed listening. And viewers, I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you for listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. It would be great if you could take a moment to write us a review. For any questions, comments, or topics that you would like to have addressed on the show, email the team at leadaz.org. To learn more about the Leadership Society of Arizona, visit us at leadaz.org.